Hello everyone, and welcome back to the How to Build an RTS game from Start to Finish series, where we learn how to build a game from the ground up while completely at the mercy of you guys. Hey guys, in our last video, we worked on a way to add selections of our units, and we made multiple different ways where you could just select them, deselect them, or you could shift select to add more. And if you haven't seen that video yet, you should go ahead and check it out as we're going to be using the same project and some of the same functions. And so I'll link that in the card as well as the description below. So this time we're going to add a third and probably the most iconic way to select units in an RTS by dragging. So when you click and drag, pulls up the rectangle and everything inside of it gets selected. So let's make it happen. I'm going to back out of play here. And now, first thing we want to do is we're going to make a new script to house all of our functions that we're going to use to build the image that you actually see on the screen. So let's create a new script and we'll call it multi-select. New script, and we're going to call this multi-select. Okay, now let's go on ahead and open that up in Visual Studio. And the first thing we want to do, as we have been doing, is add a namespace. So our namespace is going to be lp.fdg.input.manager. And the reason we're using the input manager is because all of this has to do with our input. Now, I could probably do something maybe with the UI, but this is only happening when you're selecting the units, so I think it's okay here. So we're going to cut all of this and paste it right in there. Now, let's make the class static, and we're going to remove mono behavior because we're not actually going to place this on an object anywhere. We're just going to have it as a reference, right? So we don't need mono behavior, and we're going to make it static so we can always reference its functions. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of everything on the inside, and we're going to make a couple variables here. So we're going to make a private static, okay, make sure it's static, texture 2D. Okay, let's call this white texture. Now we're going to make a texture 2D function to check if our white texture exists, and if it doesn't, then we're going to create it. Okay, so we're going to say public static texture 2D, and we're going to call this white texture, and we're going to use get. Okay, so if our white texture is equal to null, meaning it does not exist, then we're going to create one. So white texture equals new texture 2D, and the points that we're going to pass into this for the width and the height are just going to be one width, one height. Okay. Then we're going to make our white texture dot set pixel. Okay. And we're going to make this 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and we'll make this white. So we'll use color.white. Oops. There we go. Now we need to apply this to our texture, so we'll do white texture dot apply. Then, once we've done that, we're going to return our white texture. Now, let's write a function to actually be able to draw this out, okay? To be able to draw our rectangle on the screen. So we're going to do public static void draw screen rectangle, okay? We're going to take in a rectangle and a color. Okay. Now we're going to use a function called GUI, and GUI is basically like UI. It is a little bit different, but it's basically just creating a UI. So we're going to do color equals color, and then we'll do GUI.draw texture, and our texture is going to be the size of the rectangle, and we're going to use our white texture. There we go. So this is nice, but I think we should also add in a border around our rectangle, so it's not just one random solid color. So let's do public static void, and we'll do draw screen rectangle border. Okay, and in this we're going to take the rectangle and we're going to take a float for the thickness, and we're going to take a color for the color of the border. Okay, scroll down here a bit so you can see it better. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the top portion of this. So let's draw screen rectangle, and we're just going to draw from a new rectangle with the points of the rectangle that we're passed. We're going to use its minimum and well x minimum, sorry, and then we'll use its y minimum. And then for the width, we'll do rect.width, and then we'll pass in its thickness. Okay, looks like we're missing something here. We need our color, so our color fits in here, so we'll do color. Okay. Now I'm just going to copy this because most of the sides are going to be a lot alike. So now we're going to let's do the bottom. Okay. And for the bottom, we're going to do yeah, we'll still use the minimum, and then but we're going to use the y maximum. Okay. And we're going to subtract this by our thickness. Now we want the width, and this is also going to be thickness for our bottom. Okay, so let's use the same one that we already have copied. Now let's do our left side. Okay, so for our left side, what we want to do is we're going to draw, let's see, x minimum. Okay, we want this to be y minimum. Oh, my bad. This one was correct. This one's y max. Okay, so we want, okay, rect minimum, okay, y minimum, and then we're going to do this time, we're going to use this one as the thickness, and this, we're going to just pass the height. And finally, let's do the right side. And this one is going to be a little weird as well, but we're going to use the x max instead of the y max this time. Okay, and we're going to subtract the thickness. Okay, and then y min, and this time, actually, this is right. We can leave this the way it is. Oh, actually, no, it's not. So let's swap these two, and we'll do thickness here, and we're going to pass the height. So rect dot height. There. Now we can draw a border around our rectangle. Perfect. Okay, now let's write a way to create a rectangle. So we're going to do public static rect called get screen rect. So this is going to, when we drag our mouse, this is going to determine how big that rectangle is. It's going to set the actual points. So we're going to take a vector 3 and we'll call it screen position 1 and a vector 3 screen position, I don't want that capital, screen position 2. Okay. Now we are going to go from the bottom right to the top left. Okay. So let's do screen position 1 dot y is equal to screen dot height minus screen position 1 dot y. Okay, now let's copy this and we're going to do the same thing for screen position 2. So let's just replace this 1 with a 2. Okay, now we've determined the position on the screen from the points that we've sent on our vector 3s. So let's do the corners. So to do the corners, we need a vector 3, and we'll do the, so we're going to go from bottom right, okay, equals vector 3. I believe it's, yeah, we'll do vector max, and we're going to do screen position 1 and screen position 2, okay, and then we're going to the top left, so vector 3, top left equals vector 3 dot minimum screen position 1 screen position 2. Okay. Now we want to create the rectangle. So to do that, we're just going to return a rectangle min-max, and we're going to go from top left, X, and we'll use the top left Y, and we'll use the bottom right X and the bottom right Y. Oops, bottom right Y. There. Now we have determined what the rectangle is going to be that we can pass to draw, as well as what we can use to draw the border. So now we need a way to check if, when we have a rectangle on the screen, sort of like this, we need to check what this is covering in our 3D space. So we want to translate what's in our 3D space to our screen space, right? So in order to do that, we're going to write a bounds. Okay, so we're going to do public static bounds, and we're going to call this get viewport bounds. Actually, let's make this easier. Get VP bounds. Okay, and we're going to need a camera. We'll call it camera. And actually, let's call it cam. And then we'll need a vector 3 for the screen position 1. And a vector 3 for, you guessed it, our screen position 2. Now, in order to calculate this, we're going to need to we're going to do a lot of the same type of math that we did in here. So we need our vector, we're going to do a vector 3 position 1, Okay, that's going to be our camera dot screen to view. Ooh, camera. Oh, cam dot screen to. We want the viewport point screen position 1. Okay, and then our vector 3 position 2 is going to be our camera's screen to viewport point, our screen position 2. Okay. Now that we have those, let's set a vector 3 minimum, which will be vector 3 dot minimum of position 1 and position 2. Okay. Let's set the maximum. So vector 3 dot max equals vector 3 dot max, and that's going to be position 1, position 2. Okay. Now we also need to set the z. So our minimum z, z is going to be our camera, our cam dot near clip plane. Okay, and then our maximum z is going to be our camera dot far clip plane. Okay, now that we have that, we need to create a bounds. We'll just call it bounds. Okay, and we are going to return. Well, we need to set bounds first before we return anything. So we're going to say bounds dot set min max. We're going to use our minimum and our maximum. Okay, now we're going to return our bounds. Okay, so now we can check if an object is within the rectangle that we've drawn. Okay, so now that we have all these, they're not really doing anything. So we need a way to actually make all of this happen. So let's save this and go back to our input manager. And let's go to the top here and create a bool, private bool, we'll call it is dragging. We'll just set it to false. Okay, we also need to get our mouse position. So we'll do private vector 3, there we go, mouse position. Okay, now we want to set our mouse position. So we're going to set our mouse position as soon as we want to start the drag. So we want to know where that corner of that rectangle is going to be. So that happens the second that we're clicking down, right? Well, this is actually the frame right before it draws, which is where we want it. So we're going to say mouse position is equal to input dot mouse position. Okay. Now, in our default right here, we want to set our dragging to true. And the reason we're doing that is because if we clicked anywhere except for on our unit, then is dragging is true unless we're lifting our mouse. So we can actually drag because we didn't click on a unit, or when we start adding other things like buildings, etc. So now that we have a way to notify that we are dragging, let's actually draw this on our screen. I'm going to get rid of update, and I'm going to write a private void OnGUI. And in this OnGUI method, this is what's going to actually draw. Okay, so this will draw automatically, but we don't want it to, right? So we're just going to put a check here. So we're going to say if is dragging, okay? If it is dragging, because if it's not, there's no need to start drawing rectangles. We're going to create a rectangle, and we'll make that equal to our multi-select, which was the script we just made, dot get screen rect, okay, from our mouse position and our input dot mouse position. Okay, so this is detecting where we started and where we currently are. Okay, now we're going to call another one of our reference functions. So we'll use multi-select, and we're going to draw our screen, and we're going to actually draw the rectangle. Okay, and so we're going to give it the rectangle that we just created, and we're going to give it a new color. I'm going to make mine. You can actually put any color you want here. You could do color.white or whatever you wanted to do, but I'm going to make a new color that is going to be, let's see, 0f, 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 0.25f. And this 0.25f is the alpha. So I'm making a black color, and then I'm toning it down so it's kind of clear so we can see through it. Now let's draw the border. So we'll do multi-select dot draw screen rect border. And we're going to pass it the rectangle. We're going to need to give it a width or a thickness. I'm just going to set it to 3 for now, and we'll do color dot how about blue. Okay. So now we can draw our rectangles, but we need a way to stop drawing our rectangles. So we want to do that when we lift our mouse up. So let's come down here and say if input.get mouse button up, so when we lift our mouse, of 0, because remember that's our left click and 1 is our right, then we're going to say if, actually not if, we're just going to set is dragging equal to false. There we go. Now let's save that and hop back over into Unity, and let's just make sure that this is working. So let's press play. We don't need to put multi-select on anything because it's not a mono behavior. It does not have to be on an object. All right, so now we're drawing our rectangle and our border. And now all we have to do is make it to where we can select what's inside of this rectangle, right? So to do that, let's hop back over into our input handler, and let's create a way to check if it's within the bounds, right? So we're going to say private, let's do a bool, and is within selection bounds, and we're going to give it a transform, and we're going to call it TF. Okay. Now, if we're not dragging, so if not is dragging, then we're going to return false. We're not going to do anything else. Okay, so if we're not, then we're going to do camera, camera dot, oh my gosh, camera cam equals camera dot main, and then we're going to do bounds dot viewport bounds, not dot, I'm sorry, we're naming one viewport. Let's just do VP, easier. VP bounds equals, and we're going to reference when we checked for our other bounds, right? So let's do multi-select. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. So we'll do multi-select get viewport, VP bounds, and we're going to give it our cam and our mouse position. Okay. Now, we also have to give it our input. Input dot mouse position. Okay. Now we're going to return viewport viewport bounds dot contains. So contains is just checking if our bounds contains a point. Okay, so if it contains cam dot, we couldn't just put our transform, right? We can't just say has our transform because remember we're checking because our transform's in a 3D space. We want to check based on the screen. So we have to say cam dot world to viewport point our TF position. Okay, so our transform yeah dot position. Okay, now that we have a way to check, we need to go on ahead and start a way to select them. And the way we're going to do that is by going to our get mouse button up function. And just above is dragging as false. We want to first deselect our units. Okay. And then we're going to write a for each statement. And for each is similar to a for statement, but it's just a little bit different, okay? So we can compare different values. So we're going to say for each transform child, okay, so we're going to check how many children are in, and actually we're going to need to set this. So let's go to our player manager, and under this we're going to say public static, and let's just call them, I guess it doesn't really matter, I'm making this too hard, huh? Player units. Okay, let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to come to our input handler, and we're going to reference that now. So we're going to say child in player manager instance player. Oops, did we make it private? Player. Oh, we didn't actually set what it is, but it's a transform. Transform player units. Okay, let's save that and go back to our input handler. Instance.player units. Okay, let's see why. Okay, it doesn't want an instance. Oh, and that's because we made it static. So if we don't make this static because we actually don't need to, in that case, then we need to reference our instance. Okay, so we're checking for children that are inside of player units. So let's go to Unity and let's set our player units inside of our player manager. So let's grab player units and set it there. Okay, let's save that and let's hop back over into our input handler. So for each child in player units, we're also going to check, we're going to do for every single one of those, we're also going to do it for we're also going to run for every single one of their children. So transform, we're going to call this one unit in child. So for every one of our units that are in the children, which the children are workers, warriors, healers. So for every unit we have inside of workers, inside of warriors, and inside of healers, right? And as that list grows, this will still work. So for each one of our units, we want to select unit, select unit, and we're going to select the unit, and we're going to select the multi-select to true, and that should do it. Let's save this and hop over into Unity and give it a whirl. Okay, so we can click. Oh, look at that. When I clicked, it's selecting all of them right now. So to fix that, let's hop back over here. Okay. Okay. So the reason why is because we are just setting our unit right away, and we don't need to do that. First, we want to check if it's in the selection bounds, right? So if it's within our selection bounds, then we need to pass it what we're asking. So if our unit is within the selection bounds, then we select it. Okay, so let's save that, and now let's go back and try it again. Okay, we can still draw our rectangles. We click 1. Okay, now it's just deselecting right away. However, we can select this, so let's go solve that issue. Since it's deselecting right away, what we need to do is remove this. We don't actually need to deselect the units here because we are already deselecting them as soon as we're clicking something that isn't our unit. So now, when we go back and click play, and we highlight, we'll select them. If we just click 1, we get 1. If we hold shift, we get both. If we click away, it goes away. And there we go. We have our classic RTS style multi-select, and we're ready to start adding in some movement, which is going to be in the next video. So if you guys enjoyed this, please smash that thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, maybe consider subscribing. We do have a Discord community, which you can find in the description below. And you can come and talk to me, hang out with me. If you have any questions about the code, feel free to ask. We have some channels in there for that. And yeah, guys, it's been really awesome so far, and I'm so glad that everyone's been putting in some ideas as well as some feedback on my social media. So, you know what? You guys rock, and as always, until next time, peace.